looking forward to this.
Nick, have you reached out to me before? I'm wondering if you are someone that I might know.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
You look super familiar to me. I'm gonna listen and we'll see.
We're friends now.
But I did send a question in, so
okay.
Yes.
Cool.
I'm looking forward to this discussion and your thoughts.
Awesome. And then Nick, if we don't get to your question, just feel free to, whenever the time is right, just ask it with your voice or drop it in the chat box, because I have a lot of information today. And usually it happens to where, the dialogue flows and we might not get through all the questions, but since you're here, I want to definitely get to your question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Please excuse my working in the yard clothes.
Okay.
Everyone else is looking pretty fabulous, so. You're like, no.
No.
Yeah.
I have my house slippers on. I'm washing clothes.
I dare not even stand up and show you my sweatpants that are full of earth right now, and my Uggs that are at the bottom.
Where are you calling from?
From Maryland.
Awesome.
Where are you all? All over, or?
I'm in Argentina. I'm in Buenos Aires. Nicole is too.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Elizabeth, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from San Francisco. It's very gloomy out here right now. Typical San Francisco summer.
Wow.
And I see Mo's on the line. Mo, where are you calling from today? Put you on the spot. Maybe Mo's writing in the chat box.
Stepped away. I know where Mo is from.
Well, since everybody's being honest about their apparel, I'm gonna start my video. Hello.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I ran out of clean underwear. That's my let's get real quick. Let's start this off being honest and and authentic. Hi, Anna. Good to see
Maryella. How are you, ladies? It's Friday.
Heck yeah. Friday is here. Oh my gosh. So happy it's Friday.
Same.
Does anyone have any fun weekend plans?
Not with
Just
the
trying
COVID.
to break the quarantine, at any moment.
Quarantine has led to a lot of home projects.
Yeah.
And this weekend's project is building a fire pit with my children.
Nice.
So we are very happy that it is sloshy outside, so we can dig the hole for the pit without it being a dry, hard earth that we're trying to break through.
Nice.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Yeah, this is a perfect time to get your hands in the earth.
Yes.
I'm jealous of you. I'm in the city. You're jealous that I'm in Argentina, but I'm in concrete jungle. I don't have that earth. I mean, I've got a beautiful patio with I can get in the earth if I want, but it's on the third level of a building. It's not in here.
Quick question. How's the COVID situation in Argentina?
Nicole, you want to take that away?
Yeah, it's interesting because comparatively, obviously not as bad, right? But something that's unfortunately characteristic, I think, of Latin America in general is just a lack of infrastructure. And so if you're familiar with Latin America, you know that there's a lot of urbanization. So within Latin America, 80% of the population resides in the urban cities. And so that would be Buenos Aires here, where Maryella and I both live. So fortunately, where we live, we have access to hospitals and it's pretty easy to get there and everything. But unfortunately, across the rest of the country, that's not true. So while our numbers are low, it's definitely more of a dangerous situation. The government handled it really well in the beginning and was pretty aggressive about the quarantine and lockdown. And I mean, here people are very okay with wearing a mask. But I don't know. I get a little bit worried, but that, I don't know. Maryella, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're fortunate, but it's unnatural to stay inside for so long, and especially in concrete jungle. We haven't had, this is also a city that's known to protest in any moment about women's rights and, rights, human rights in general. So we haven't had any major, sparking off of protests here in Buenos Aires. But yeah, I mean, I went to get my regular doctor checkups, and the hospitals were like pretty empty and like ready for anything to happen. And, that's something that was really nice to see from the other perspective. They give you fresh masks. There's not a lot of people. They're very organized, and it's just a totally different health care system than that I've experienced in the States.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, and actually, piggybacking on that, Maryella, I was actually just in the hospital for 11 days. Everything's okay. I didn't have coronavirus, and my son's okay. But I would say they cleaned the hospital rooms 2 to 3 times a day. And so it was very thorough in making sure that, everyone wore masks. And so I would say from that aspect, it was really surprising and really obviously pleasantly surprising. And so with that, I see we've got tons of people on the line. And so I want to dive right in. So let me go ahead and hit record so we can get started. Perfect. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this lovely Friday, finally. I am so happy it is Friday, as I imagine many people on the call are. And so I want to thank you all for taking the time out today to be a part of this impactful and powerful and important conversation, because although, the media has died down and, Black is no longer trending, as Maryella has said, it's important that we keep having these conversations, because there are so many layers to racism in the United States and globally, but looking at this and seeing what we can do and how we can play our part. And so, of course, at the end, we're going to leave about 15 minutes to sign petitions, to take some action, and Maryella has a bunch of stuff that she's prepared for today. So with that, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping. This is a little bit different than any chat learn that we've ever had. So whether this is your first one or your 50th, this is a little bit different in the sense that we really, really, really encourage participation here. This is a roundtable discussion. We want you to share. We want you to talk. So, please feel free to turn your cameras on, come off of mute. Nick and Elizabeth are already on camera and very happy to see them. And we're all bringing the funk, so don't worry. No one can smell you or see your greasy hair. And so with that, please feel free to write in the chat. You can write to myself or Maryella anonymously by hitting privately, and it'll come to us, and we don't have to share with the rest of the group your name. But we really appreciate engagement here and conversation. And then lastly, this is being recorded, so we will share the recording. I will share the petitions afterwards, and we will share, and then you can, pass this along. And so with that, handing it off to Maryella. So thank you, Maryella.
Yes, thank you, Nicole, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of their beautiful day. I know that things are crazy in the world, so I really, really value everyone's time here. We will take, as Nicole said, we'll take the last 15 minutes to take action together. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of information, but again, this is meant to be an open dialogue. So I would love to hear your voices. I'm actually going to be asking some questions, and I would love to not hear crickets. I'm going to be that kind of I'm going to sound like a broken record by inviting you to come off of mute and turn your cameras on. So hey, Suzanne, thanks for turning your camera on. I see you. Awesome. And I see that we're calling from all over. So I'm calling from Buenos Aires, and we've got some folks calling from, let me look in the chat box here. We have Maryland, Boston, we've got New York, we've got some more people in Argentina, New York, Mexico. Awesome. Great. So as Nicole mentioned, this is a global issue, and I know that a lot of the focus right now is happening in the States, just with everything that's been coming out of the woodworks. And so I don't know if you all have been participating in our Chat and Learn series as of, so far, but we've done some excellent chats. I've had some friends come on and give me their 2 cents as well, so you can see different perspectives, because as I am speaking about the Black experience, I am not the representative, and we have an umbrella of people that are involved in the Black experience, from the person that is Black until the person that has never met a Black person before. Our culture, the media, Hollywood, music infuses what we consume with a lot of Black culture and the roots of Black culture. So, I am by no means the voice of the Black experience, but I am offering this space so that we can share dialogue in that. I'm an artist. I studied theater and film. I've been living in Buenos Aires since 2012. Actually, first time I came was in 2009. And I love it because I'm able to just water my creative being here. And so I have just come into myself more and more to become more of an activist. I've worked in the world of PR and marketing, remote for years, and also coming into the space of healing. And with that said, something that I'm offering in this time that I know that it's really difficult to share our voice and to speak our truths and maybe speak up when we might not have before, especially before COVID and all these things. I would like to invite you to write to my personal email. That's MariellaMarie@gmail.com, as I'm offering a Free Your Voice workshop. So just to kind of get that knot out of your throat and kind of loosen up a little bit and really ground yourself so that you can honor yourself and speak your truth. We have so many ways to share our voices these days. It's not just the physical aspect of the voice that you hear. It's also the space that we take up, how we take space, how we share our voice on digital platforms, as well. So very, very intricate part that I'm super excited to offer these days. So that's my introduction. I know that you all who have joined before have probably heard this several times, and actually some of you all have reached out to me, so I really appreciate that. What we've done so far is one of the things that Nicole actually said. We spoke offline. One of the chats that we did recently was called, I think it was the second chat, Black is trending, now what? And what do we do to not just make this a fad and to really kind of keep the momentum? And as Nicole mentioned, she is seeing, and we are seeing a lot less activation on social media and in our email boxes and things like that. So one of the suggestions that I had from the jump is just to, if you can bring this practice into your life and into your workspace, I really encourage you to do that. But it's all about keeping up with these bookends, these staples of making something frequent so that we don't lose sight and that it doesn't just become a thing of the past. So something that I've been doing with these chats, with this chat series, is to take a moment of silence before we jump into all of the nitty gritty. So I'm just going to invite you all to do that again with me. So if we can take a moment of silence to respect and honor all of the lives that have been taken before their time, and all of the people who are fighting right now, whether it is behind the computer or in the streets or in the hospitals, just to take a moment of silence to connect with ourselves and to honor life. So you can close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open. And I suggest also finding your connection to gravity. So maybe rooting your feet into the ground and just, being mindful of your body. Thank you so much, everyone. So another thing that we do to kick us off for this next hour is we sing this beautiful poem/hymn that I would love to hear your feedback after we sing this, if this is your first time hearing this, or if it is not. If you've joined us on the previous chats, I'd love to hear from you what you think about it, now. And so I invite everyone to read along with me as I sing, or sing with me. You can keep yourselves keep your mutes on, or you can turn them off, whatever makes you most comfortable. So this is the Black National Anthem that I would like to share with you all today. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the living sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day, let us march on till victory is won. Thank you, everyone. So I'd love to hear if that was your first time participating in that hymn, or if it was not. I would love to just hear your feedback. Let's just start getting the activity and engagement going now. I see we've got some claps happening in the chat box, but I would love to hear from you and let me know what that did for you, or what that brings to your awareness, especially now.
Maryella, I just want to chime in here, while people are typing in the box and maybe getting the courage to share how they feel. I feel like this brings a different feeling every time I hear you sing it. And now that I'm participating in it, because being transparent with everyone on here, I didn't know if it was really okay for me to participate in singing this song, as I'm not a Black woman and this isn't my song in my particular fight, even though I support it. So, I feel a lot differently about it now and feeling more comfortable singing it because, I know that I am supporting the fight for racial equality. And it's just really powerful to hear it, every time. And we have some people writing in the chat. So Nick said that I love that we opened with the song. I'm so happy that I hear it more than just during the MLK breakfast at church. Perfect. And then Elizabeth said, beautiful, first time, and she echoes my feelings. So, and then I'll pass it off to you, Maryella. And anyone else, feel free to write in the chat.
Yes, because I know we've also got some folks who are not from the States or not living in the States. So I would also, invite you to share your voice as well. Even if we do get specific with the States. And yes, Nick, I totally agree. I definitely try within the work that I do as an artist and as, in my work, whenever I can, just extend the Black History Month, or the Black History highlights of the year that tend to happen in a very diluted way and then, kind of just get swept under the rug. So that's why I wanted to also start the chats, this chat series by singing this. So thank you for acknowledging that, Nick. We've got some more folks writing in the chat. Kept thinking of John Lewis, a great activist that passed recently. And it's definitely powerful. Thank you all for participating. I invite you all to watch the very first chat series that we did. The chat was about Juneteenth. And so as Nicole said, she wasn't sure if she could sing along. And I just say, if you believe in human rights and if you feel like you are called to support, I think that you're definitely invited. That's my personal opinion. And again, you need to ask several people because maybe that other people don't feel that same way, but you have my invitation if you need one. All right, so let's move on to the next slide here. So one thing that you all know that I love to talk about, and I talk about this on the chat series, and I also talk about it in the other chats that I host with Power to Fly. I love talking about emotional intelligence. And I think that especially with this issue of race in the world, it makes complete sense to bring in emotional intelligence so that, a lot of people and especially we're living in this time where we multitask and we have a million things to do, and we just want the button to end racism, and that is not going to happen. It is never going to happen. There's not going to be a button to end racism. And so I just, invite everyone to connect with their emotional intelligence. And if you're new to this series, I want you to drop in the chat box, how do you define emotional intelligence? I know that a lot of people haven't really been asked this question. I spoke in San Francisco, Nick, last year about the importance of emotional intelligence in the workplace. And people were like, oh, it was like a new concept. And it's like, no, it's there. You're actually born with this, it's inside of you. And so just connecting with your emotional intelligence to then be able to advocate for yourself and for human rights in this case that we're talking about today. So I'd love for you to drop in the chat box your definition of emotional intelligence. And if anyone wants to go ahead and go a step further, how are you using or how are you seeing folks use emotional intelligence to create awareness and advocate for human rights? You can also take yourselves off of mute. I see you all are writing in the chat box, which I really appreciate. All right, and as I see you all are typing vigorously, I love it. I'm gonna just mention here, Mo wrote about the song. I love hearing the song. Nicole, I would say this is your fight because you care about what's happening around social justice, and what's happening to your friends. Absolutely, Mo, I echo that as well. Okay, so let's see. Rob says, for me, a big part of emotional intelligence is listening in all capital letters. Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Rob. What's up? I see you. Okay, so your consciousness and understanding of the feelings of those around you. I'm using my emotional intelligence to bring the issues to our audience. Awesome. Yeah, so I'll just start with what Rob was saying. Listening is key. We often, it would be great, I believe, if everyone could just be a teacher for like a year or something, because you realize the importance of listening. Like too much talk time means you're just like beating your head against the wall, and really, your expectations aren't really you're not gonna meet your expectations. And so thinking about listening and how the many ways that we can listen obviously through hearing, but then, there are other ways of listening too, which takes another rhythm of kind of being a little more still, a little more comfortable with being by yourself and feeling, the different emotions and different things that come up. So if you want to go back and look at the other series, the other chats in the series, oftentimes I like to put an image on the screen and say, like, what do you feel? What does that make you feel or think? Before just jumping into like, I think this is right or I think this is wrong. That's very like kind of mental. And emotional intelligence, the mind is kind of a secondary aspect of emotional intelligence. It's really about connecting with your intuition and feeling what feels right, what feels good. Would you want someone else to feel that way? Would you want to feel that way? Putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Nicole, do you want to read what's in the chat box? I see some folks are writing here.
Yeah, of course. And so Elizabeth said, to me, it is the ability to empathize with all cultures and people. And then Suzanne dropped in the chat box. I'd say that it's about not assuming that you know everything. Other people exist and have their own experiences, and you will never find out what those are if you don't listen. Look, common theme, and care and actually be curious rather than thinking about whatever you want to say next. And then Mo wrote something, but in response to something else.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear what Mo said as well.
So Mo said, Nicole, unless you agree with those people, then they are irrelevant. Think of it this way. Do you care if someone says, oh, wow, here's another person without a medical disability inserting themselves to bring awareness to cancer, AIDS, autism, domestic violence? You get my point. Thank you for being an ally. Oh, thank you, Mo. That's a really lovely way to think about it.
Awesome, cool. Thank you all for sharing your voices there. Let's move on to the next slide, because I got some juicy things I want to share. First, I don't know if anyone on this current call was on our last call, but one of the points of reference that I brought up was Lemonade syllabus, just to bring in some popular culture. We talked about education and systemic racism in education and how I was saying, well, if the teachers or the education system isn't going to show the full history of the United States, which includes a lot of ugliness that we have been trying to avoid, and that is really getting us into a lot of trouble as we see now, then I would ask for you to look towards artists that are really in a more unapologetic way, bringing some insight to, you know, the B side of history, as I like to say. So I just want to get a show of hands. Maybe no one on this current chat was on the last chat, but has anyone made progress with the Lemonade syllabus? I'll also drop this in the link at the end of our chat so that if you're interested, you can join that conversation. And if not, we can just move on to the next slide if no one has made any progress. But I'll talk about this at the end of the chat, but it's a great opportunity to learn about a lot of things that have been happening, you know, since slavery in the States up until now. And so obviously Beyonce is a very pop culture figure, and it's not about whether you like her or not, it's about how she is using her art and talent to kind of show the B side of history, and not in an overt way, like, yeah, it's like kind of like you have to kind of get into this Lemonade syllabus and then read the text and go through some of the writings that they're suggesting, which is interesting. So let's jump into this first question here that someone has submitted offline: how to create provocative and impactful content during the current climate. This is a great question, especially now that we see that, you know, that Black is not trending. And I would argue that it obviously is, and it always will be, but not to the extent that it has been, you know, right after the murders and right after a lot of the really crazy and ridiculous activities that have been going on in the States. And it's really hard for me also to look at it from another country, and it's just like, what can I do? And so these series really help me, this Chat and Learn series really helps me just at least share my voice and just bounce opinions and ideas with you all. So again, I really thank you all for being here. All right, so how to create provocative and impactful content during the current climate. Let's go to the next slide. So I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to talk about or show content that might not be what you think people will just be the happiest about, right? Because we can't continue to sweep our history under a rug and expect for big changes to happen. So that's why I put here conscious marketing and conscious branding paired with conscious consumption. So I would just like a show of hands if anyone knows what this photo is referencing, and it's okay if you don't. I'm happy to explain it. And I'll give you a hint that this photo is of someone outside of the States, actually in Brazil. So I don't know if you are familiar with the story of this person. So if not, we can move on to the next. Yes, great. Someone has written here, Brazilian woman slave. I can't quite remember. Perfect. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So this is actually a legend. She is a legend. So we're going to continue to talk about confronting myths and legends and untold stories, right? To get to understand and have more of a holistic approach. So Anastasia is a Brazilian legend. These are photos that my friend today uploaded on Instagram, and I was like, hey, I'm talking about this person today. So I immediately put her in the slide, like literally 10 minutes before we started, as she has Brazilian roots and she's from the States. She is a biracial artist, and she drew this photo to kind of, you know, represent this Brazilian legend who her name was Anastasia. And I think that it's really impactful, especially now that we have to wear masks, you know. So there are different versions of this legend. The most basic is that she was so beautiful that white women were jealous and made her wear a muzzle to hide her beauty. In every version, she was a healer. And another version, she was caught teaching folks about African goddesses and connecting them to Christianity so that people could worship undercover these original African deities. So they can worship these deities under the kind of label of Christianity so that people wouldn't, you know, get executed. And for that, she was made to wear a muzzle. Another legend is that she was telling people how to escape. And some stories share that she had blue eyes because her mother was raped by a white slave owner. So this is a very, you know, real legend, whether it's, whether unfortunately the folks that wrote the history books did not put these kinds of stories in our history books, which is also why we need to look to artists and kind of like that word of mouth passing on from generation to generation to really just kind of start to put the pieces together ourselves, because otherwise we lose so much information. And in a time when, this legend was, shunned, and it's a great opportunity to bring her up to light and just to kind of have these uncomfortable conversations, right? Because it's not so comfortable to talk about why you would have to put a muzzle over a woman. And we can kind of even draw some lines of how that is being replicated today in modern society with different things, right? I'm sure we can agree. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Oh, I think I had you click on something. Okay, perfect. So how might we continue learning and engage in those uncomfortable conversations and ultimately make change for future generations? This is another great question that someone submitted offline. And I think that there's another question right after that I want to kind of tackle the two together. Okay, so how can we better honor the Black experience in the workplace to increase acquisition and retention of Black talent? So these are kind of, one is very technical and then, specifically with work and what can I do now at work? And the other is kind of like, how can we engage in these really uncomfortable conversations? So if you go to the next slide, Nicole, I want to just bring up some of our shared history that we can really, get nitty gritty right now even and kind of bring to the forefront what's going on with some branding. And I'm from Los Angeles. I've lived as an artist in Hollywood, and actually there's a big reason I'm not there right now. And if you can just take a step back, connect with your emotional intelligence as always, because a lot of these things can really get you upset. And just to kind of do the work on your own by yourself and just say, what do I feel when I see this image? This is Shirley Temple. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Shirley Temple. So what are some of the ways that your family or you or your grandparents have, passed down this way of seeing Shirley Temple on the big screen, right? You probably have, I'd like to actually ask you all that. When you think of Shirley Temple, what do you think? You probably don't think of this image.
No, I think of a sweet little girl who's like tap dancing, and that's about the extent of Shirley Temple that I know.
I think of the drinks.
You think of the what?
The drinks.
The drinks, yeah, the Shirley Temple drinks. So even, and this is actually really interesting, down to the how do you have a good time? Let's name the drink after something that really has more impact, so this really diluting our history. And who's doing that? People who are responsible for branding and marketing and for selecting the characters that act in the plays and selecting the characters that act in Hollywood. I have a personal story where I was, one of my frustrations with Hollywood is that they wouldn't cast me, even though if, I did a great job. They wouldn't cast me on certain things because they had already cast the family, like the husband, let's say in this case, and the son or the daughter. And because I didn't look like I could be the mom, I couldn't get the role. So this is just a way of really keeping our minds in a box. And you don't really know that as a consumer. You watch the movie, you say, what a great movie. But what would have happened if they unapologetically casted, a woman and a woman having a child, or a son and a daughter that were biracial? That really brings a whole different perspective to the conversation. And guess what? It's real life. It's like, I think that it's time for us as consumers, and this is like that conscious consumption that I brought up on one of the previous slides, is that we have to demand this now. Like, stop trying to dilute our history and what is actually happening in these streets, because it gets us in trouble. It makes people do a second turn when maybe if they were able to see it on screens more, or if they were able to see it in the media more, then we wouldn't have that issue. Did you want to say something, Nicole?
Yeah, I did. There's a couple of people writing in the chat, but then I also had a question, comment, and I'm hoping it makes sense as I'm formulating it in my head as I am thinking about it. But so Mo said that them think of a drink. Nick said, this image makes me think of a lack of accountability to teach children to have empathy and knowledge. And then Rob shared that she was weirdly a United States ambassador years later, which is really interesting and speaks to a lot, especially looking at this picture. And so, you know, talking about this sort of, you know, highlighting more Black actors and actresses, right? When I was growing up, one of my best friends was Black, and I went to her house and a lot. I went to her house. That sounds very interesting. I went to her house a lot. And when I was at her house, it was a different culture of TV, right? Because she watched BET a lot, and she had a different type of music that she listened to, and she had a different set of movies that she watched. And this is so interesting to me because, you know, I want to ask you and other people on the line who might be able to talk about this, but, you know, is there this like famous code switch that people talk about when you do cast a Black actor or Black actress in a predominantly white movie versus a predominantly Black movie, and the differences in maybe television for Black people, right? Like, what are the different topics that they're talking about? And I'm not sure if this is making sense, but I'm hoping that it is like making some sort of sense.
Absolutely. It absolutely makes sense. And I would love to hear if anyone on the line wants to chime in before I go in with what I think. Does anyone here joining us live want to give their opinion? See some smiles and people thinking. I love this. This is great.
Wait, so the question is about code switching. Sorry, just
Yeah, kind of. I was hoping Maryella could pick it up or somebody else could pick it up where I was not closing the actual loop. But yeah, just this kind of code switching, because it was a different set of movies and it was different actors. It was way different music than I was used to listening at my house. And I see Nick smiling a lot, so I want to challenge her to come off of mute because I feel like she's got an opinion here. So no pressure, but I definitely want to encourage you to chime in.
I do not want to get in trouble. I think, I don't think that the topics were necessarily always different topics, but I think that a lot of times there's just a lack of opportunity for actors that didn't and actresses that didn't look a certain way to be able to provide those role models for me growing up. So for instance, you know, I'm kind of older. So, you know, when I was a kid, Little House on the Prairie, I thought that was boring. I didn't want to watch it. I couldn't connect to that at all. And none of the people looked like me and they didn't have any of my language. And then like shows like the Cosby Show came out, or like the Jackson 5 cartoons. I'm thinking like Fat Albert, the Jeffersons. I love the Jeffersons. Like those were images, things that made me feel good about myself as a child. I could laugh at it. I could enjoy it. There were also very targeted images that would be depicted in shows that honestly I couldn't watch as a child because I would cry. Like I think of Good Times. The imagery of that, the oppression of that, just hearing the theme music as a child, I would start crying. I could not watch stuff like that. And it didn't mirror anything that I was experiencing, so I couldn't relate to it at all. So I think that it's not necessarily that the topics are different. I mean, I guess sometimes the topics can be a bit different, but generally, you know, it's about, you know, when it's children, it's the same thing. You want to have friends when you go to school, you get into the same kinds of arguments, or like, oh, I like that boy, but my friend likes that, you know, whatever. Like it's the same sort of subject matter, but you just didn't ever really see yourself in it until you saw people that looked like you playing those parts. So imagery is very important, and I think the imagery has been used a lot, obviously, when you look at like the brown eye, blue eye, you know, when you look at different experiments like that, imagery is very important when it comes to topics like this. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Nick. Thank you. And please share more. And I just want to piggyback on what you said. imagery is key because you invite a different culture. Just what you're saying, Nicole. You share more of a holistic story. If I'm looking at a big billboard in my neighborhood and nobody looks like me, I'm not going to buy that product, or I'm not going to feel like I have to actually do a second piece of work to like put myself in that position to see that I can. Okay, then it's extra work to have to do. And to piggyback on what Nick was saying, imagery and authenticity, right? Because clearly Shirley Temple is putting on the image of the blackface, but it's not authentic. And actually during these times, it was it was used in a way that to this day, it is, a part of systemic media, let's say, racism in education, in media, and the way that we try to make people feel included when really, give someone else who can actually speak for this in this space authentically the mic, so that they don't need to be challenged to a certain extent. Actually, I want to, if you can click on the link that's on this slide, Nicole, because this is actually something that I feel is happening right now. That I know that's happening right now. So I really encourage everyone to listen to this podcast. We'll drop it in the chat box. So this is talking about the legend of Aunt Jemima and how the industry and it crosses several media. So it crosses, from being involved in theatrics, so conventions, theater, food, the kitchen, they're in people's homes, branding, ads, and how they were able to monetize this version of a mammy, which I don't know if you all are familiar with that. A mammy is a very under-sexualized woman who has no responsibility but to take care of the white family.
Yeah,
and she is in the kitchen, and she is there to cook for the family and feed the family and be the mammy. And so the history of Aunt Jemima, which is very, very interesting, if you want to scroll down, I just want for us to look at some of these, scroll all the way down. I put these books, the links to these books in at the end, but just look at how over time, the imagery of Aunt Jemima changed. And the thing that I want to highlight is who was owning that narrative. It wasn't someone who was like, let me really share this authentic food that I want to cook for everyone. It was, before Quaker Oats bought, let me just go through my notes. I think it was R.T. Davis. It was R.T. Davis and his marketing team, basically, that, they were like, let's go and find someone who could represent this mammy image that we all hold dear in our hearts in the South, in the good old South. And so that's when you have Nancy Green that they found to portray this role. And in that case, that it's very hard for a Black woman to find, good paying work. Was she gonna say no or yes? So this is kind of like a double-edged sword. So if you work with a company that is looking for someone to represent the brand, let's say, or to, essentially they were, trademarking this new product, and they realized that during this time menstrual shows were big. So a lot of people, at least in popular culture, would be receptive of this. And this was a time when the North and the South were divided, and they were trying to really just make a lot of money by portraying that, the South is doing better and let's appeal to the people in the North. But really, in that moment, it would have been really cool if emotional intelligence could have been involved to say, wait a minute, who owns this narrative? Because actually the woman that one of the books that I'll reference a little later, she has worked really hard over the years to dive into this story. And she says that one of the most fascinating things as she speaks around the country about specifically Aunt Jemima and the story of how this kind of unconscious consumption, allowed also people of color and Black people to think that they were supporting a Black-owned business. And so how that really just brings about more disillusion. And so I know I'm speaking a lot here, but I just wanted to just say this is a very complicated subject. There is no button to end racism, and it takes, an individual to dive deeper and to reflect on, wait a minute, let me look at this from all sides. At this point, over so much time, it comes to a point where it's like, I can't really trust people these days. You know, let me do my own research, because from the way that I was educated, from the things that I'm being shared, the algorithms that are showing me things online, you know, I can take that, and then I want to also put another facet to it by saying, okay, who are these people? What are their intentions? You know, did this person have a choice or not? Was there more, you know, was there something else that was available? You can continue to scroll down so you can see how actually they were receiving feedback, and they started to change some of the branding and change, you know, some of the advertising that was happening with this. But really what they did was they tried to, they created this myth of Aunt Jemima, who was not a real person, by really diving into creating these stories and giving her a family and giving her this like personality. It was completely scripted. But as you know, the consumer who was, you know, probably trying to support integration and, you know, evolution as far as human rights and racism, they're taking this as a gift, and they're not really looking at it from all ways around. So that's something that I just wanted to share with you all today, as far as I know that this is something that's actually a hot topic in the media right now. And I think, yes?
Oh, sorry. This is so interesting that you bring this up, because, you know, for two things that are interesting here, right? The fact that people thought that the person who this was named after was actually getting money from this, and they weren't. I think even the grandson or their great grandson had a lawsuit. I believe, I might be completely wrong there, so please somebody else chime in. But thinking that, going back to that, thinking they're supporting somebody when they're not at all. And also, you know, somebody who's a white person who thinks they're not racist, but they are, thinking like, why is this important to change a maple syrup bottle? Like, what does this have to do with anything? How is this going to help the cause? So this is really important. I'm excited that you shared this, so I can share this with people who were arguing about why this is not important.
So they're removing the imaging, right? So it's going to be interesting what they come up with next, because they're owned by Pepsi now. So I just saw that.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. That's something that I wanted to flag too. It's like, I want to see what's going to happen next, you know, now that this is coming to its head, because something that they wrote here was Quaker Oats is retiring the more than 130-year-old Aunt Jemima brand and logo, acknowledging its origins are based on a racial stereotype. And it's like, okay, they're acknowledging it now after 130 years. So my question to everyone on this call and everyone who's listening is like, how much time has to pass before we actually, as conscious consumers, say that, you know, maybe this isn't right, or like, I would like to ask for some you know, some options here. And it's not just white families that have Aunt Jemima in their kitchen, Black families do as well. And, you know, like I said, this author that was mentioning, one of the things that struck her was like, a lot of young Black folks were like, you know, oh, I thought I was supporting a Black business.
Yeah, really? Wow.
In addition to the picture, something else that stands out to me, which is just really offensive, is the spelling and how this person would speak.
Yeah.
Ladies, here's a temptalating lunch, chillins love, instead of saying children. I just get upset all over again looking at it. Just wanted to share that.
Am I hallucinating that higher up, at least one of the people that they have in their little grid of people isn't at all Black?
Where?
Up a little bit?
Oh, at Pepsi or?
No, go up more. More. Keep going. There we go. Edith Wilson. Oops, go down. That's also true, but down a little bit.
There.
Edith Wilson right there.
Is she showing what you want to see, Suzanne?
Tiny bit up. There. She's not Black, is she?
Yes.
Well, is she?
Yes.
Okay, I'm like, wait a minute, what? And of course,
again,
that there was somebody in blackface. Say again.
No, again, the fact that you have to question it is probably also a very strategic thing. Like if you notice, one of the first branding elements was, you know, the mammy was super, super, super dark skin. And one of the more recent portrayals of Aunt Jemima was more fair skin. So, you know, there is some psychology behind it as well. And it's very deep also within the Black community. Colorism is very big. You know, you had the slaves that worked outside and the slaves that worked inside. Right. It just brings about a whole nother piece of confusion.
And actually, and so we're about to get into the action part where I share petitions, but that was something that was brought up on one of the calls, I believe, when we had Cherie on, and she mentioned that she doesn't even use the word fair skin because fair skin refers to being better than a darker skin complexion. So, you know, using lighter skin versus darker skin, and just like the racism behind fair skin, and just these things that you don't think about, that once you learn them, you're like, how has this gone on for so long? Perfect. And so Rob said that she dropped out, referring to Shirley Temple, and he said that he hadn't thought about that regarding to the fair skin. So yes, and I know that that's something that Maryella and I have talked about covering in one of these chat series, so I'm excited to do that, talk about language and what goes into that and racism behind a lot of that. And so with that, Maryella, I wanted to pass it over to the action part. So I'm going to drop down to the slide that you mentioned, and then we can, I believe, no, sorry, here we go.
Yeah. So I had other slides prepared, but these conversations go deep, and I really appreciate everyone for sharing their voice. So this first link here from Black women, if you can click on that link, and actually drop it in the chat box. I think that it would be really interesting to, you know, start to navigate these waters of, you know, knowing if you do actively want to support, you know, Black-owned businesses, to go to organizations like this, for example, and keep up with what they're doing and see how you can, you know, support the effort. So they have some links here to educate yourself, to empower yourself, and to support, and to, you know, kind of become a conscious consumer, which is what I was speaking about today. So it'd be great if you all could, you know, peruse through, and then, you know, on our next chat next week, come back with some things that you resonated with, and that maybe if you supported any, if you want to highlight some of those as well. Great. All right. So then the next link here is Black Wall Street. This is another site. I put their Instagram here because I know everyone's on social these days. So maybe if you want to just kind of scroll down, Nicole, and you can kind of just see the kinds of content that they post, and so that you can keep up with some of the things that they're doing. And then of course, go to the link, and you can drop that in the chat box as well, which is, yeah, perfect. So you can download their app, which they give you, you know, resources to all the different Black-owned businesses that you can support. You can list a business on the app. If you have friends that you know might need some extra support, you can, you know, refer them. Or if you want to be on there and, you know, you find it calling and appealing, please do so. If you want to advertise, especially, you know, I would say even for people who aren't Black or are not people of color, you know, hit them up and say, can I advertise, and reach out? You know, I want to bring more Black voices to my company or to my business, and, you know, just be kind of unapologetic about that. Don't beat around the bush, and just be straight up. And I think that's how, you know, we're going to just be a little more, you know, together in this cause. And then obviously they've got a blog, and you can become an ambassador and learn more about Juneteenth. So that's something else I wanted to share. And I guess if you have the link, so we usually do this just to drop in the chat box if you've been able to download the app. Let's see if people can do that now. Maybe just put a 1 in when you clicked on it and downloaded the app. Nice, thanks, Suzanne.
And I'll include all of these links in the follow-up email, so everyone will be able to access these afterwards as well.
Great. Okay, it might take a little while for folks to download, but I definitely encourage everyone to download. Okay, you can go to the next link, Nicole. So this link is really interesting. This is a Black Art Matters shop, which I feel like it could be a really cool opportunity to get involved with how to support artists, and to also start to maybe even sell some of this work on your own, to be able to, you know, spread the message. So they sell t-shirts, posters, wall art stickers. They have digital files for Black men, women, natural hair, all these things you can shop, you can buy, and you can support them in that way. And I think if you scroll down a little more, right, so make money selling our art. I think that this is a cool opportunity for folks who want to figure out how to, you know, make some money and support the artists as well on both sides. So as we see, a lot of the content has kind of died down as far as Black voices, and in our last chat, we talked about Black is trending, now what? So I think this is a cool opportunity to, it's a lot of information on this, but basically they help you figure out how to, you know, put their images and the art on different things and sell it on Shopify. And obviously I would just encourage everyone to practice, you know, integrity there, and, you know, give the artist the majority of the money and don't take it all for yourself, so that, you know, you are giving to that cause. So this is another really cool resource. I know it's not about signing petitions, but I think this is a way that we could, you know, really get active in supporting Black businesses and just like with the movement of Black Lives Matter, and just to become a part of it on your own. Great. And then the last, these next two links are the books to the woman that I was referring to, who was in that podcast. It'd be cool, Nicole, if you could also drop the link to that podcast at some point. But Mammy, a century of race. Can you go back so I can read that? No, it's okay. I know I'm asking you to do a couple of things at once. Mammy, A Century of Race, Gender, and Southern Memory, which is, I've started to actually read this book, and I found out about this book as I was researching for today's chat and listening to this podcast that Nicole will drop in the chat box soon. But just to, you know, re-educate ourselves. These are things that, like Nick said earlier, you know, we really only sing the Black National Anthem maybe on Martin Luther King Day or during Black History Month, but really there, you know, there's so much information to know and to learn that is the B side of history that it's not being put into media and into our history books. So I definitely recommend that book. And then there's another book there by the same author, Skin Deep, Spirit Strong, The Black Female Body in American Culture. So we didn't really get to, actually, maybe we'll get to talk about this. It would be nice so that I can kind of touch on why I think this would be an important read as well. So if you can drop that in the chat box, and then can you go back to the presentation, Nicole? Mm-hmm. And there's a slide, if you scroll up, like right where we were just ending, up, top. Go down, right there, right there, yep, perfect. So can you make that a little bigger? Mm-hmm. So this is just kind of bringing this current, right? So we talked a little bit about blackface and just kind of this, you know, if there is space for the Black voice or Black person to be featured in a brand, what is that space like? Is it, does that person have to be in a box, or can they truly express themselves? So I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the woman that's, I've got 3 pictures of her on the outside. So not the photo in the middle. The one with the banana skirt on. Does anyone know who that is? It's one of my idols. Maybe Rob probably knows.
Josephine Baker?
Yeah. She's my girl. She's an idol of mine. So Josephine Baker, her story is that she was born in the States, I think in St. Louis. She was becoming a big player on the minstrel show stages. So you can see in the top right corner, this is kind of, you know, the role that she was kind of, the only role really that was available for her was to kind of be this comedic blackface actor on stage. And she was kind of tired of it. She was like, I'm gonna go to Paris. I'm gonna go to Paris and see what happens. She went to Paris, and I encourage everyone to research about Josephine Baker. She is a queen. She started, one of her famous first performances is this banana dance, which, you know, has a lot of connotations that we can talk about on another chat. She found out how to kind of fit into this role and then kind of explore it, and it was less of an oppressive role that she played in Paris, more of a curious kind of over-sexualized of the Black woman, which is a totally different chat that we can have at another time. But she felt more comfortable on that stage versus the minstrel show stages. So, oh, Rob says that he got to meet her sons, part of the Rainbow Children. Nice, awesome. Yeah, she ended towards the end of her life, she adopted several children and called them the rainbow children. So this is just the kind of the divergent thinker that she was. And the reason I wanted to come back to this slide is because, oops, are we still there? Can you see me? Yes. Okay, the reason I wanted to come back to this slide is because speaking of conscious consumption, right? So from the role of let's say the person that is asked to represent the brand, or the person that is asked to play this role in a show or in media or whatever, and then you have the product that is then delivered after that. So let's say that you as a consumer buy this Josephine Baker image put it on your shower curtain, right? My question would be, how can you be more aware of what you're buying so you know what this image really means at its core? So it's not just another pretty, picture that is, in your bathroom in this sense with the shower curtain. Or, for this American Apparel item here, I look at her in this photo and I just really resonate with her. She's just like, take the damn picture, and pay me. And, if my argument would be that if there were more people of color, more women, more Black women who could add to the narrative and just really help us to rearrange the narrative of the Black perspective, then we would just be, far better off versus, these other kinds of these bigger companies that don't have a lot of diversity and inclusion and that continue to own the Black narrative across media. And so I know that I've dropped a lot of points and a lot of knowledge. I know we've only got about 3 more minutes left, so I just would like to hear from you now and see what you all have to say or share regarding everything that I've shared today.
I just want to ask a question to you, Maryella, and everyone on the line. I love this because it's such a place for me to learn, as my circle is not particularly diverse and definitely not as diverse as I would like. And so this has been such an amazing opportunity to learn so much. I myself misspeak and say the wrong thing, and I appreciate this space. And so with all that said, and I want to say that so that other people feel comfortable coming to this and sharing and asking questions, but do you feel like there is a change coming? Do you feel like Black women feel more empowered to be who they are? And, with whether it's their hair or the way that they dress or the way that they embrace their culture, do you feel that that's coming and that's happening? Or do you feel like there's still a gap between that?
I think that Black women embrace their culture. We embrace our culture. I think the problem comes when Black appropriation happens, and it just makes it, just like even when Nick was saying, like, even listening to the song makes me cry because of everything else that's surrounding this very important TV show of its time. It was very relative, but because everything around it was not like that, it doesn't really prepare the person to be connected with the outcome of what that stirs up inside and the conversations that it can happen. So I guess we are making some strides forward. But yeah, we definitely have a long way to go. And I think it comes with listening, like Rob said in the beginning, emotional intelligence, listening and kind of stepping down when you can and letting other people share their voice when you can.
Nick, do you want to share? Not to put you on the spot.
I just have one question, and it's really it's not a small question, it's a big question. So maybe it's something to think about and then talk about next week. But it is, how do we encourage these sorts of conversations and dialogues, particularly in communities where the majority of the community does not look like us, and it is very rooted in old thoughts and old patterns of behavior that they were never acceptable, but certainly with everything happening right now, there should be more heightened awareness to the fact that these things are not acceptable. So instead of bringing shame to the community, like, how do you foster and encourage a meaningful dialogue without saying very clearly, these are the things that are happening in this community and these things are wrong. And then everyone sort of goes to their corner and hunkers down instead of coming together to foster some sort of understanding and a better setting of this is what we want our community to represent.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot. Sorry, am I on mute?
No, we hear you.
You can see my rental house background here, not my style. Mariella's been to my house. Well, yeah, she know. Just quickly, I mean, I have been thinking a lot about this work should not be on Black people and people of color, and there needs to be more white people who say we need to be leading these conversations and not putting the work on others and the emotional labor, obviously, that's unpaid in many cases. And so I'm thinking about how to do that more systemically to get people who'd be like, oh, it's not my I'm uncomfortable, which is basically code for not my problem. I can just go live in my white neighborhood, go to my white club, put my kid in my white school. And it's like very easy for white people to do that and then write something on Twitter. But there has to almost be like white people who say like, racism is this world will not improve for you and your children or anybody if we don't actually acknowledge the fact that every white person repeats racist systems, even if they think they're an anti-racist. And we can't name ourselves anti-racist, only Black people can. So I really think a lot more white people need to step up to the plate. And I say this knowing that I'm one of those white people and that I need to get like white people to actually be the majority of the people in these conversations. Like, it's just ridiculous how much work Black people have to do right now, especially when it's like top of the headlines. So that's one of the things.
Well, little by little, and I think that these chats help foster progress. So thank you, KZ. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for sharing their thoughts and their words. Thank you, Nicole, for always, coming up with some really touchy questions and bringing your perspective as well on these chats. And again, there are lots of crazy things that are going on in the world, and this theme of racism that is just at an all-time high globally, and especially in the States, my remedy would be just consistency, frequency, bringing this up, putting it in your calendar. Let's have a little come to Jesus moment. Let's light the candles. This is a safe space, and really invite everyone to share their voice, and get off of the internet for a little bit and share, actually with people around us. So we've got work to do, but we're doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I love being a part of these because I have a lot to learn and I've got amazing people to learn from. And so, thank you all for joining this. We're doing these weekly, so please join us next week and feel free to come and share your voice as well. This is what this is all about, as you've seen. And I dropped the link for our upcoming chats in the box, and we've got a lot of other stuff happening, talking about allyship in the trans community, and other things too, future of events and hiring stuff. But, I definitely appreciate everyone showing up and bringing comments and bringing themselves. So thank you. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. It's Friday.
Friday. I'm going to take the kids to the zoo.
Bye.
Goodbye.